In 1720, the smartest man alive lost everything. Isaac Newton, the physicist who discovered gravity, who invented calculus, who literally decoded the mechanics of the universe, made what should have been a simple investment decision. He bought shares in the South Sea Company. The stock rose. He sold and pocketed a tidy profit of £7,000, a fortune at the time. By any measure, Newton had won. Then something happened. The stock kept rising. His friends got richer, people with half his intellect, a fraction of his education. Men who could barely read a balance sheet were making money that Newton had left on the table. And so, the man who understood orbital mechanics, who could predict the movement of celestial bodies across centuries, made the most human decision imaginable. He bought back in. At the peak. When the South Sea bubble collapsed weeks later, Newton lost £20,000. In today's money, that is roughly $5 million. The greatest scientific mind of his generation, perhaps of any generation, was financially ruined by a decision a child could have avoided. When asked about it later, Newton said something I think about often. He said he could calculate the motions of the heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people. Here is what I find fascinating about that story. Newton was not stupid. He was objectively one of the most intelligent humans to ever live. And yet his intelligence was precisely what destroyed him. His brain, that magnificent instrument of reason and logic, became the weapon that emptied his pockets. This is the paradox I want to explore today. Why do 99% of smart people stay poor? Why does the person who aces every exam, who rises to the top of every organization, who impresses everyone in the room, so often end up with less wealth than the quiet neighbor who never made a headline? The answer, I believe, has almost nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with a trap so subtle, so invisible, that the smarter you are, the more likely you are to fall into it. I call it the ego trap. And by the end of this, I want to show you something that took me years to understand, that the skills which make you successful in almost every area of life are the exact skills that will betray you when it comes to building lasting wealth. Let me take you back to a different time. The year is 1929. The location is a modest apartment in Queens, New York. A woman named Anne Scheiber is sitting at her kitchen table, reviewing her finances. She is 40 years old. She works as an auditor for the Internal Revenue Service. Her salary is modest. Her apartment is small. Her social life is practically non-existent. Anne Scheiber is, by every external measure, unremarkable. Her colleagues at the IRS think of her as competent but cold. She never married. She has few friends. She spends her evenings alone, reading financial statements the way other women might read novels. When the stock market crashes that October, Anne Scheiber loses a significant portion of her savings. Now here is where Anne Scheiber's story diverges from nearly every other story of that era. She did not panic. She did not try to outsmart the market. She did not call herself an idiot and swear off investing forever. She simply bought more. Over the next 65 years, Anne Scheiber did something almost incomprehensible to the modern mind. She lived on her small salary. She never earned more than $4,000 a year in her entire career at the IRS. She was passed over for promotions again and again, likely because she was a woman in a male-dominated field. She retired with a pension that would barely cover her rent. But every spare dollar she had went into a single strategy. She bought shares of solid companies, blue chips, the kind of boring, predictable businesses that Wall Street hotshots dismissed as old-fashioned. Companies like Coca-Cola, Schering Plough, Bristol Myers, and then she did the hardest thing imaginable for a human being to do. She did nothing. She held those shares through the rest of the Depression, through World War II, through Korea and Vietnam and the Civil Rights era, through the stagflation of the 70s, through Black Monday in 1987, through every crisis, every panic, every moment when smarter people than her were convinced the world was ending. Anne Scheiber died in 1995. She was 101 years old. She had lived alone in the same rent-controlled apartment for 50 years. She wore the same old clothes. She clipped coupons. She never took a vacation. When her lawyers opened her estate, they discovered she had accumulated $22 million. $22 million. From a woman who never earned more than $4,000 a year. The money went to Yeshiva University to fund scholarships for women. Anne Scheiber had never set foot on that campus. She had no connection to it, but she wanted to give other women the opportunities she had been denied. I think about Anne Scheiber constantly, not because she was a genius, she was not. Not because she had access to secret information. She worked for the IRS, not Goldman Sachs. Not because she got lucky with some spectacular bet. I think about her because she understood something that Isaac Newton, with all his brilliance, never grasped. The game of wealth is not won by being the smartest person in the room. It is won by being the most patient. And patience, it turns out, requires the complete absence of ego. Let me explain what I mean by that. When we think about ego in the context of money, we usually think about flashy cars and expensive watches and people who brag about their portfolios at dinner parties. That is certainly one manifestation of ego, but it is not the dangerous one. The person buying the Lamborghini to impress strangers is easy to identify. They are their own cautionary tale. The dangerous ego is much more subtle. It is the ego that whispers in your ear that you are smarter than everyone else, that you can see patterns others cannot, that the rules which govern ordinary investors do not apply to someone of your caliber. This is the ego that destroyed Isaac Newton. Think about what was happening in his mind when he watched that stock rise after he sold it. Newton knew he was a genius. The entire world knew he was a genius. He had solved problems that had baffled humanity for millennia. Surely, he must have thought, surely, someone who can do that can figure out a simple stock. His intelligence became a liability. It convinced him that he could not possibly be wrong, that his analysis was superior, that the timing of his first exit was a mistake that his brilliant mind could now correct. But here is what the ego trap obscures. Financial success has almost nothing to do with intelligence. It has almost nothing to do with analysis. It has almost nothing to do with finding the right answer. It has almost everything to do with behavior. And behavior, unlike intelligence, cannot be taught in a classroom. You cannot get a degree in patience. There is no credential for humility. The skills that get you promoted at work, that earn you accolades and respect, that make you feel competent and capable, those skills are often the exact opposite of what builds wealth over decades. Before I go further, I want to ask you something. In the comments below, tell me this. What is your biggest financial fear? Is it running out of money? Is it missing the next big opportunity? Is it looking foolish to the people around you, I ask? Because I think our financial fears reveal far more about our relationship with money than our financial goals ever could. Share yours below. I read every comment. Now let me tell you about another trap, one that catches smart people with particular frequency. The year is 1998. Long-term capital management is the most admired hedge fund on Wall Street. Its founders include 2 Nobel Prize winners in economics, not just smart people, the smartest people. The fund's strategy was based on mathematical models so sophisticated that only a handful of humans on Earth could fully understand them. For 4 years, long-term capital management printed money. It delivered returns that made its investors feel like they had discovered the financial equivalent of a perpetual motion machine. The models worked. The math was flawless. The founders were geniuses. You probably already know how this story ends. In August of 1998, Russia defaulted on its debt. The markets behaved in ways that the models said were essentially impossible. Events that should occur once in 10,000 years happened in a single week. Long-term capital management lost $4.5 billion. It nearly brought down the entire global financial system. But here is the detail that haunts me. After the collapse, after the bailout, after the wreckage was cleared, one of the founders was asked what went wrong. His answer was revealing. He said the models were not wrong. The market was wrong. Think about that for a moment. The market was wrong. This is the ego trap in its purest form. The belief that your model, your analysis, your framework is so correct that reality itself must be mistaken when it fails to conform. The smartest people in the room had convinced themselves that they had decoded the market, that they understood it better than it understood itself. Anne Scheiber never made that mistake. She never thought she was smarter than the market. She never tried to predict what the market would do next week or next year or next decade. She simply assumed the market was smarter than her and acted accordingly. She bought good companies. She held them forever. She let the market do what it wanted to do. But here is where the logic breaks down for most people. If Anne Scheiber's strategy is so simple, so obviously correct, why does almost no one follow it? Why do smart people spend their lives trying to outthink a system that has humbled geniuses for centuries? The answer, I believe, lies deep in human psychology. And to understand it, we need to go back even further in history. For most of human existence, survival depended on action. Our ancestors lived in a world where passivity meant death. If a predator appeared, you ran. If food was scarce, you hunted. If your tribe was threatened, you fought. Every instinct we carry is tuned for a world where doing something is almost always better than doing nothing. Those instincts served us well for 200,000 years, but they are catastrophically mismatched with the modern financial world. In investing, doing nothing is almost always the superior choice. The research on this is unambiguous. The more frequently people trade, the worse their returns. The more they try to time the market, the more money they leave on the table. The more convinced they are that they can beat the system, the more certainly the system beats them. And yet we cannot stop ourselves. We are wired to act. We feel lazy when we do nothing. We feel irresponsible when we are not constantly monitoring, adjusting, optimizing. Smart people suffer from this more than anyone. Their minds are restless. They are used to solving problems through effort and analysis. Sitting still while their money compounds feels like negligence, like they are wasting their gift. But here is the terrible irony. The very quality that makes them successful, that restless, analytical, problem-solving mind, is what prevents them from building wealth. Wealth does not come from solving problems. It comes from enduring time, and enduring time requires the absence of the need to prove anything to anyone, including yourself. This is what I mean by the ego trap. It is not vanity. It is not arrogance in the obvious sense. It is the subtle, almost invisible belief that your intelligence entitles you to better outcomes, that your ability to think clearly about complex problems means you should be able to think your way to wealth. But wealth is not a complex problem. It is a simple problem that requires difficult behavior. Let me give you another historical example. In the early 20th century, a janitor named Ronald Read lived in the small town of Brattleboro, Vermont. He worked at a gas station for 25 years. Then he worked as a janitor at JCPenney for another 17 years. He never earned more than a modest wage. He wore second-hand clothes. He drove a beat-up car. When he ate at the local diner, he left unremarkable tips. Nobody in Brattleboro knew that Ronald Read was a millionaire, multiple times over. When he died in 2014 at the age of 92, his estate was valued at $8 million. He left most of it to his local hospital and library. How did a janitor accumulate $8 million? The same way Anne Scheiber accumulated $22 million. He bought solid companies. He held them for decades. He lived below his means. He never tried to impress anyone. And crucially, he never fell into the ego trap. He never thought his intelligence entitled him to anything. He never tried to outsmart the market. He simply let time do its work. Now compare Ronald Read to the thousands of MBAs who graduate each year from the finest business schools in America. They are smarter than Ronald Read. They have better training. They have access to more information, more sophisticated tools, more prestigious networks. And yet the median outcome for those MBAs is not even close to what Ronald Read achieved. Why? Because they believe their intelligence should accelerate the process. They believe their analysis should give them an edge. They believe that someone with their credentials should not have to wait 50 years to get rich. The ego trap is not about thinking you are better than other people. It is about thinking you are exempt from the laws that govern other people. It is the belief that the rules of patience and humility and time apply to ordinary investors, but not to someone as capable as you. Every smart person who reads those words will nod in agreement, while secretly believing it does not apply to them. That is the nature of the trap. It is invisible to those caught in it. Here is where I want to shift from the problem to something that might resemble a solution. But I need to be honest with you. There is no hack for this. There is no shortcut. The ego trap is not a bug in human psychology that can be patched with a clever mental trick. It is a feature of the same intelligence that makes you good at everything else. What I can offer is a reframe, a different way of thinking about wealth that might, if you are willing, loosen the grip of ego just enough to let time work its magic. The reframe is this: wealth is not a reward for being smart. Wealth is a side effect of behavior sustained over time. Read that again. Let it sit with you. Every smart person I know has the intelligence to get rich. Almost none of them have the temperament, and temperament, unlike intelligence, can be cultivated, not by learning more, but by unlearning the instincts that betray you. The first instinct to unlearn is the need to prove yourself. Isaac Newton bought back into the South Sea Company because he could not tolerate the idea that less intelligent people were outperforming him. His ego demanded he correct what he perceived as an injustice. The universe had made a mistake. By letting fools profit while Newton sat on the sidelines, he would show them. This is the deepest layer of the ego trap, the belief that your financial outcomes should reflect your intelligence, that the market owes you returns commensurate with your abilities. But the market owes you nothing. It does not know who you are. It does not care about your degrees or your test scores or the problems you have solved. It rewards patience and punishes action, regardless of how smart the actor might be. The second instinct to unlearn is the need to be right. Smart people hate being wrong. They have built their identities around being correct. Every time they have succeeded, it is because they analyzed a situation and determined the right answer. But investing is different. In investing, you can do everything right and still lose money for years. You can make the mathematically optimal decision and watch someone who made an objectively worse decision get rich while you stagnate. This drives smart people insane. It feels unjust. It feels like the universe is mocking their intelligence. But here is the truth. The universe is not mocking you. It is simply indifferent to you. And until you can make peace with that indifference, until you can act correctly without needing to be validated by immediate results, you will keep falling into the trap. The third instinct to unlearn is the need to control. This is perhaps the hardest one for intelligent people. They are used to mastery. They are used to understanding systems and manipulating them to achieve desired outcomes. Give a smart person a problem, and they will find a lever to pull. But the market has no levers, or rather, it has levers that give the illusion of control while actually making things worse. Trading more frequently feels like control. Checking your portfolio hourly feels like control. Building sophisticated models feels like control. None of it is control. All of it is the ego desperately trying to prove it can influence something that cannot be influenced. And Scheiber understood this. She surrendered control. She accepted that she could not predict the market, could not time the market, could not outsmart the market. All she could control was her own behavior. How much she saved, what she bought, how long she held. That surrender of control is what allowed her to accumulate $22 million. Not genius, surrender. And here is the strangest part, the part that I still struggle to fully accept. Surrendering control, abandoning the need to prove your intelligence, accepting that wealth is about time and not brilliance. This is not giving up. It is not laziness. It is not wasting your gifts. It is the highest form of intelligence there is. Because true intelligence is not the ability to solve problems. It is the ability to recognize which problems do not need to be solved. It is the wisdom to know when effort is counterproductive. It is the humility to admit that some systems are beyond your comprehension and always will be. Isaac Newton could have been one of the wealthiest men in England. He had the income. He had the years. He had everything except the one thing that mattered. He could not tolerate looking stupid. Ronald Reed never worried about looking stupid. He was a janitor. People already thought he was ordinary. He had nothing to prove. And that freedom, that liberation from the need to impress, is what allowed him to build a fortune that would stun the smartest people in any room. Let me tell you how I think about this in my own life. I am not as smart as most of the people reading this. I have no special insight into the market. I cannot predict what will happen next year or next decade. My analytical abilities are modest at best. But I have one advantage that I have cultivated carefully over the years. I have learned to make peace with doing nothing. I have learned to tolerate watching other people get rich faster than me. I have learned to stop, interpreting my portfolio performance as a reflection of my intelligence. This is not a natural state for me. Every instinct screams that I should be doing more, that I should be researching, analyzing, optimizing, that someone who writes about money for a living should surely be able to beat the market if he just tries hard enough. But I have seen too many smart people destroy themselves to believe that anymore. I have seen the geniuses at long-term capital management. I have seen Isaac Newton, the smartest man of his age, lose everything because he could not tolerate the madness of people. And I have seen Ann Scheiber and Ronald Reed, two people nobody would call geniuses, accumulate fortunes that would make hedge fund managers weep with envy. The evidence is overwhelming. Intelligence is not correlated with investment success. If anything, the correlation is negative. The smarter you are, the more elaborate the stories you can tell yourself about why this time is different. The more convincing your ego becomes when it whispers that the rules do not apply to you. So here is what I would leave you with. If you are smart, and I suspect you are if you have made it this far, your intelligence is not the asset you think it is. Not when it comes to money. Your intelligence is a liability. It is the voice that tells you to act when you should be still. It is the force that demands proof of your abilities when no proof is required. The path to wealth is not through analysis. It is not through prediction. It is not through finding the edge that others have missed. The path to wealth is through surrender. Surrender of the need to prove yourself. Surrender of the need to be right. Surrender of the need to control. Buy good things. Hold them forever. Ignore the noise. Let time work. That is the entire strategy. It fits on an index card. A child could understand it. And yet it is nearly impossible for smart people to follow because every word of it is an insult to their ego. The ego trap is not a lack of knowledge. It is an excess of confidence. It is the belief that the game rewards cleverness when the game actually rewards patience. It is the assumption that effort should translate into results when the opposite is true. I think about Isaac Newton in the final years of his life. He had changed the course of human history. He had unlocked secrets of the universe that had been hidden for millennia. He was celebrated across Europe as the greatest intellect of his age, and yet he died with the memory of that loss. The South Sea Company, £20,000. A fortune evaporated because he could not bear to let lesser men prosper while he sat idle. I wonder if, in his final moments, he understood what had happened. If he recognized that his greatest strength had become his fatal weakness. If he saw finally that the madness of people included his own madness. The madness of believing he was above it all. Wealth is the residue of behavior sustained over time, not brilliance, not insight, not the ability to see what others cannot see, just patience, just humility, just the willingness to let go of everything your ego tells you that you deserve. Ann Scheiber understood this. Ronald Reed understood this. They understood that the goal was not to be the smartest person in the room. The goal was to be the person who stayed in the room the longest. That is the wisdom I hope you carry with you. Not a stock tip, not a strategy, just the quiet. Recognition that your intelligence may be the thing standing between you and everything you want. And if this perspective has shifted something in you, even slightly, I would be grateful if you subscribed to this channel. Not for me, but because these ideas compound too. The more you expose yourself to this way of thinking, the more natural it becomes, the more automatic, until one day you realize you have stopped fighting the market and started letting it work for you. That is what I wish for. You. Not wealth in the narrow sense, but the peace that comes from no longer needing to prove anything to anyone. The freedom that comes from releasing your grip on outcomes you cannot control. The smartest thing you can do with your money is to stop trying to be smart with your money. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you escape the trap that has caught geniuses for centuries. Time is the only genius that matters. Learn to get out of its way.